Jamaica Inn by Daphne du Maurice. Chapter 1. It was a cold, grey day in late November. The weather had changed overnight, when a backing wind brought a granite sky and a mizzling rain with it, and although it was now only a little after 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the pallor of a winter evening seemed to have closed upon the hills, cloaking them in mist. It would be dark by 4. The air was clammy cold, and for all the tightly closed windows, it penetrated the interior of the coach. The leather seats felt damp to the hands, and there must have been a small crack in the roof, because now and again little drips of rain fell softly through, smudging the leather and leaving a dark blue stain like a splotch of ink. The wind came in gusts, at times shaking the coach as it travelled round the bend of the road, and in the exposed places on the high ground it blew with such force that the whole body of the coach trembled and swayed, rocking between the high wheels like a drunken man. The driver, muffled in a greatcoat to his ears, bent almost double in his seat in a fair endeavour to gain shelter from his own shoulders, while the dispirited horses plodded sullenly to his command, too broken by the wind and the rain to feel the whip that now and again cracked above their heads, while it swung between the numb fingers of the driver. The wheels of the coach creaked and groaned as they sank into the ruts in the road, and sometimes they flung up the soft, spattered mud against the windows, where it mingled with the constant driving rain, and whatever view there might have been of the countryside was hopelessly obscured. The few passengers huddled together for warmth, exclaiming in unison when the coach sank into a heavier rut than usual, and one old fellow, who had kept up a constant complaint ever since he had joined the coach at Truro, rose from his seat in a fury, and, fumbling with the window sash, let the window down with a crash, bringing a shower of rain in upon himself and his fellow passengers. He thrust his head out and shouted up to the driver, cursing him in a high, petulant voice for a rogue and a murderer, that they would all be dead before they reached Bodmin if he persisted in driving at breakneck speed. They had no breath left in their bodies as it was, and he, for one, would never travel by coach again. Whether the driver heard him or not was uncertain. It seemed more likely that the stream of reproaches was carried away in the wind, for the old fellow, after waiting a moment, put up the window again, having thoroughly chilled the interior of the coach, and, settling himself once more in his corner, wrapped his blanket about his knees and muttered in his beard. His nearest neighbour, a jovial red-faced woman in a blue cloak, sighed heavily in sympathy, and, with a wink to anyone who might be looking, and a jerk of her head towards the old man, she remarked for at least the 20th time that it was the dirtiest night she ever remembered, and she had known some. That it was proper old weather, and no mistaking it for summer this time, and, burrowing into the depths of a large basket, she brought out a great hunk of cake and plunged into it with strong white teeth. Mary Yellen sat in the opposite corner, where the trickle of rain oozed through the crack in the roof. Sometimes a cold drip of moisture fell upon her shoulder, which she brushed away with impatient fingers. She sat with her chin cupped in her hands, her eyes fixed on the window splashed with mud and rain, hoping with a sort of desperate interest that some ray of light would break the heavy blanket of sky, and but a momentary trace of that lost blue heaven that had mantled Helford yesterday shine for an instant as a forerunner of fortune. Already, though barely 40 miles by road from what had been her home for 23 years, the hope within her heart had tired. And that rather gallant courage which was so large a part of her, and had stood her in such stead during the long agony of her mother's illness and death, was now shaken by this first fall of rain and the nagging wind. The country was alien to her, which was a defeat in itself. As she peered through the misty window of the coach, she looked out upon a different world from the one she had known only a day's journey back. How remote now, and hidden, perhaps, for ever, were the shining waters of Helford. The green hills and the sloping valleys, the white cluster of cottages at the water's edge. It was a gentle rain that fell at Helford, a rain that pattered in the many trees and lost itself in the lush grass, formed into brooks and rivulets that emptied into the broad river, sank into the grateful soil which gave back flowers in payment. This was a lashing, pitiless rain that stung the windows of the coach, and it soaked into a hard and barren soil. No trees here, save one or two that stretched bare branches to the four winds, bent and twisted from centuries of storm, and so black were they by time and tempest that, even if spring did breathe on such a place, no buds would dare to come to leaf, for fear the late frost should kill them. It was a scrubby land, without hedgerow or meadow, a country of stones, black heather, and stunted broom. There would never be a gentle season here, thought Mary. Either grim winter as it was today, or else the dry and parching heat of midsummer, with never a valley to give shade or shelter, but grass that turned yellow-brown before May was past. The country had gone grey with the weather. Even the people on the road and in the villages changed in harmony with their background. At Helston, where she had taken the first coach, she had trodden familiar ground. So many childish memories clung about Helston. The weekly drive to market with her father in the vanished days, and when he was taken from them, the fortitude with which her mother held his place, driving backwards and forwards, winter and summer, as he had done, with her hens and her eggs and her butter at the back of the cart, while Mary sat at her side, clutching a basket as big as herself, her small chin resting on the handle. Folk were friendly in Helston. The name of Yellen was known and respected in the town, for the widow had had a hard fight against life when her husband died, and there were not many women who would have lived alone as she did, with one child and a farm to tend, with never a thought of taking another man. There was a farmer at Manukhan who would have asked her had he dared, and another up the river at Gweek, but they could tell from her eyes that she would have neither of them, but belonged in body and mind to the man who had gone. It was the hard work of the farm that told upon her in the end, for she would not spare herself, and though she had driven and flogged her energy for the 17 years of her widowhood, she could not stand up to the strain when the last test came, and her heart went from her. Little by little her stock had decreased, and with times being bad, so she was told in Helston, and prices falling to nothing, there was no money anywhere. Up country it was the same. There would be starvation in the farms before long. Then a sickness attacked the ground and killed the livestock in the villages around Helford. There was no name to it, and no cure could be discovered. It was a sickness that came over everything and destroyed, much as a late frost will out of season, coming with the new moon and then departing, leaving no trace of its passage save the little trail of dead things in its path. It was an anxious, weary time for Mary Yellen and her mother. One by one, they saw the chickens and the ducklings that they had reared sicken and die, and the young calf fell in the meadow where he stood. The most pitiful was the old mare who had served him them 20 years, and upon whose broad and sturdy back Mary had first straddled her young legs. She died in the stall one morning, her faithful head in Mary's lap, and when a pit was dug for her under the apple tree in the orchard, and she was buried, and they knew she would no longer carry them to Helston market day, Mary's mother turned to her and said, "There's something of me gone in the grave with poor Nell, Mary. I don't know whether it's my faith or what it is, but my heart feels tired, and I can't go on any more." She went into the house and sat down in the kitchen, pale as a sheet, and 10 years her age. Listless, she shrugged her shoulders when Mary said she would fetch the doctor. "It's too late, child," she said. 17 years too late. And she began to cry softly, who had never cried before. Mary fetched the old doctor who lived at Morgan and who had brought her into the world, and as he drove her back in his trap, he shook his head at her. "I tell you what it is, Mary," he said. "Your mother has spared neither her mind nor her body since your father died, and she has broken down. At last, I don't like it. It's come at a bad time." They drove along the twisting lane to the farmhouse at the top of the village. A neighbour met them at the gate, her face eager to impart bad news. "Your mother's worse," she cried. She came out of the door just now, staring like a ghost, and she trembled all over and fell down in the path. Mrs. Hoblin has gone to her, and Will Searle. They've lifted her inside, poor soul. They say her eyes are shut." Firmly the doctor pushed the little gaping crowd away from the door. Together, he and the man Searle lifted the still figure from the floor and carried her upstairs to the bedroom. "It's a stroke," said the doctor, "but she's breathing. Her pulse is steady. This is what I've been afraid of, that she'd snap suddenly like this. Why it's come just now, after all these years, is known only to the Lord and herself. You must prove yourself your parents' child now, Mary, and help her through this. You are the only one who can." For 6 long months or more, Mary nursed her mother in this, her first and last illness. But, with all the care she and the doctor gave her, it was not the widow's will to recover. She had no wish to fight for her life. It was as though she longed for release, and prayed silently that it would come quickly. She said to Mary, "I don't want you to struggle as I have done. It's a breaking of the body and of the spirit. There's no call for you to stay on at Helford after I am gone. It's best for you to go to your Aunt Patience up to Bodmin." There was no use in Mary telling her mother that she would not die. It was fixed there in her mind, and there was no fighting it. "I haven't any wish to leave the farm, Mother," she said. "I was born here, and my father before me, and you were a Helford woman. This is where the Yellens belong to be. I'm not afraid of being poor, and the farm falling away. You worked here for 17 years alone, so why shouldn't I do the same? I'm strong. I can do the work of a man. You know that." "It's no life for a girl," said her mother. "I did it all these years because of your father and because of you. Working for someone keeps a woman calm and contented, but it's another thing when you work for yourself. There's no heart in it then." "I'd be no use in a town," said Mary. "I've never known anything but this life by the river, and I don't want to. Going into Helston is town enough for me. I'm best here with the few chickens that's left to us, and the green stuff in the garden, and the old pig, and a bit of a boat on the river. What would I do up to Bodmin with my Aunt Patience?" "A girl can't live alone, Mary, without she goes queer in the head or comes to evil. It's either one or the other. Have you forgotten poor Sue, who walked the churchyard at midnight with the full moon, and called upon the lover she had never had? And there was one maid, before you were born, left an orphan at 16. She ran away to Falmouth and went with the sailors." "I'd not rest in my grave, nor your father neither, if we didn't leave you safe." "I'd not rest in my grave. I'd not rest in my grave, nor your father neither, if we didn't leave you safe. You'll like your Aunt Patience. She was always a great one for games and laughing, with a heart as large as life. You remember when she came here 12 years back? She had ribbons in her bonnet and a silk petticoat. There was a fellow working at Treelawarren had an eye to her, but she thought herself too good for him. Yes, Mary remembered Aunt Patience with her curled fringe and large blue eyes, and how she laughed and chatted, and how she picked up her skirts and tiptoed through the mud in the yard. She was as pretty as a fairy. "What sort of a man your Uncle Joshua is, I cannot say," said her mother, "for I've never set eyes on him, nor known anyone what has. But when your aunt married him 10 years ago, last Michaelmas, she wrote a pack of giddy nonsense you'd expect a girl to write, and not a woman over 30. They'd think me They'd think me rough," said Mary slowly. "I haven't got the pretty manners they'd expect. We wouldn't have much to say to one another." "They'll love you for yourself, and not for any airs and graces. I want you to promise me this, child, that when I'm gone you'll write to your Aunt Patience and tell her that it was my last and dearest wish that you should go to her." "I promise," said Mary. But her heart was heavy and distressed at the thought of a future so insecure and changed, with all that she had known and loved gone from her, and not even the comfort of familiar trodden ground to help her through the bad days when they came. Daily her mother weakened. Daily the life ebbed from her. She lingered through harvest time, and through the fruit picking, and through the first falling of the leaves. But when the mists came in the morning, and the frosts settled on the ground, and the swollen river ran in flood to meet the boisterous sea, and the waves thundered and broke on the little beaches of Helford, the widow turned restlessly in her bed, plucking at the sheets. She called Mary by her dead husband's name, and spoke of things that were gone, and of people Mary had never known. For 3 days she lived in a little world of her own, and on the 4th day she died. One by one, Mary saw the things she had loved and understood pass into other hands. The livestock went at Helston Market. The furniture was bought by neighbours, stick by stick. A man from Coverack took a fancy to the house and purchased it. With pipe in mouth, he straddled the yard and pointed out the changes he would make, the trees he would cut down to clear his view, while Mary watched him in dumb loathing from her window as she packed her small belongings in her father's trunk. This stranger from Coverack made her an interloper in her own home. She could see from his eye he wanted her to be gone, and she had no other thought now but to be away and out of it all, and her back turned forever. Once more She read the letter from her aunt, written in a cramped hand on plain paper. The writer said she was shocked at the blow that had befallen her niece, that she had no idea her sister was ill. It was so many years now since she had been to Halford. And she went on. There have been changes with us you would not know. I no longer live in Bodmin, but nearly 12 miles outside, on the road to Launceston. It's a wild and lonely spot, and if you were to come to us, I should be glad of your company winter time. I have asked your uncle, and he does not object, he says, if you are quiet-spoken and not a talker, and will give help when needed. He cannot give you money or feed you for nothing, as you will understand. He will expect your help in the bar in return for your board and lodging. You see, your uncle is the landlord of Jamaica Inn. Mary folded the letter and put it in her trunk. It was a strange message of welcome from the smiling Aunt Patience she remembered. A cold, empty letter, giving no word of comfort, and admitting nothing except that her niece must not ask for money. Aunt Patience, with her silk petticoat and delicate ways, the wife of an innkeeper. Mary decided that this was something her mother had not known. The letter was very different from the one penned by a happy bride 10 years ago. However, Mary had promised, and there was no returning on her word. Her home was sold. There was no place for her here. Whatever her welcome should be, her aunt was her own mother's sister, and that was the one thing to remember. The old life lay behind. The dear, familiar farm at the shining Halford waters. Before her lay the future, and Jamaica Inn.